Hey, we're here with Basia Bulat. Thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Your record, Heart of Mine, has been out since January, and we've been living with it in our offices for a couple months, and we're always just so inspired by your singing. First, right off the top, I mean, you have a lovely voice.
Well, thank you.
Is that something that you train for, or is it something that you've had all your life? Just growing up, you've always wanted to sing?
I've always been singing. The only time I actually started taking vocal lessons was after I actually hurt my voice recording my first album, and I wanted to make sure that never happened again. So it's just something that I've always done, I guess, and I guess for a long time it was secondary to all these instruments that I was really focused on, and I wanted to be a bass player actually for a really long time. I studied upright bass and I studied jazz bass for a lot of years when I was in high school. So it was only after I was told, you don't pick jazz, jazz picks you. I thought, okay, well, I better start doing something else.
And then you decided to start singing.
Well, always singing, but just started working on my own songs, and just something that happened to sort of happen for fun in university and took off on its own.
I'm glad you mentioned the instrumentation, because to me it's quite extraordinary, all the different instruments you play, whether it's the hardo harp or what's this one? This is one's called the hammered dulcimer, which I don't think a lot of people play, and then there's also the banjo and of course the acoustic guitar, but there's and now you mentioned bass, that upright bass that you play. Where did you decide, or how did you decide to pick up all these instruments?
Again, not so much a decision as much as just something that happens. I guess I just never really think about it too much. I just assume that if it has strings on it, for the most part, I'll be able to play, as long as it's not a violin.
Wow.
It's just something that I want to, I don't know, I guess I'm attracted to a sound, and so if I am able to come across an instrument and it's affordable, I'll play it and practice on it until I can write something on it. And it's not necessarily that I want to be virtuoso with any particular instrument. I just seem to have a sort of reasonable knowledge of everything, a touche-à-tout sort of thing, yeah.
And the other thing too is that the album's not restricted to those instruments. I mean, there's horns on the record, and there's other things that come up. I mean, it's a very eclectic sound for a folk artist.
Yeah.
Right? I think of folk artists, I think of, you know, a singer-songwriter with a guitar, but that wouldn't do your sound justice at all, probably.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been a lot of debate recently about folk, because it seems to be something that is coming back into popularity, especially in England. And in Europe, I've noticed it quite a bit. And I think that it's a very debatable term, especially with regards to my music. There's a lot of purists who would not consider me in that realm, and then there's other people who wouldn't be able to call me anything else. So I think any sort of genre term is really subjective, but I just kind of make the music I make. I can't really help it. The next record is all electronic or something, probably, but I don't know. We'll see.
Well, those are a whole bunch of other instruments that you probably would want to play with, right? Or even just mucking around with GarageBand.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that more than anything, I'm a bit of a servant to the song, and so if I have something in my head that you can't really satisfy yourself until it kind of gets out onto, in my instance, I record to analog tape, but maybe this time onto GarageBand, do something different. And it's just always good to try and keep changing and keep working at something new.
Is the process that you have words, obviously, and then you write melodies to those lyrics?
It's always different. Every song is different.
Right.
I've had a song where I woke up and I had almost the entire song in my head, and I never thought. I remember reading something about Keith Richards waking up with some song in his head, and I thought that's crazy, and then obviously my songs are not nearly as good, but that happens when you start writing, I think, a lot. You know, if you've been, for example, if you're swimming and then that night at night you're dreaming and you can sort of feel yourself swimming. I think it's like that a lot of the time too. You just melodies seem to follow me around, or different words seem to stick in your head, and every song is different.
And I guess instrumentation is that way too, right? Like once you have the melody and you have the lyrics, then you start thinking about, well, how should the song sound sonically with other pieces, right?
Yeah, and I think more than anything, I know how I want a song to feel, and so the sounds are sort of helping me get towards that feeling, and certain instruments obviously are capable of a very wide dynamic of feeling and have a lot of depth to them, so it's kind of nice.